Everton confirmed that Marcel Brands had left his post as director of football, and they went on to tell us a strategic review of football structure will now take place, which will inform the best model for the club to proceed with the long term. So he's gone.
Yep.
Did we feel, I think we did feel there would be some kind of change internally, and he is the change?
Yeah. I mean, a strategic review of the football buying policy, by whom? I thought that was Marcel Brands' job. So I'm not quite sure who's going to conduct that strategic review. Rafa Benitez, I suspect. I suspect that the only thing that's changed between April when he was given a new 3-year contract, Brands, is Benitez. Because nobody could suggest that Everton were going in the right direction towards the end of Ancelotti's range. No one can suggest that any buying policy over the last 3 years has been particularly great, because they didn't buy any in the summer, so it can't be about the buying policy during the summer. So you've signed a guy in April on a new 3-year deal that you've now been 7 months later, who hasn't bought any new players during that period of time besides Damari Gray, who you might turn around and say would be perceived to be a success, and you take him out now. I think a lot of the time people get reputations in football that they don't necessarily deserve, both management and directors of football. Look,
players as well.
And players as well, of course. And Marcel Brands came with a reputation that I'm not entirely sure was as merited as we thought it would be, in the same way that Steve Walsh was attributed for all the success at Leicester. And they come into a different environment. You look at Everton and you say, well, who sanctioned all of these purchases?
Yeah.
Who sits there with the diligence behind the advice given by a director of football and goes, I'm going to pay £30 million for Iwobi. I'm going to pay £50 million for Sigurdsson. I'm going to pay £30 million for Moise Keane. I'm going to do... This is the owner. So the same people that have been in situ, that have allowed Marcel Brands to spend this money, are going to be the same people that review it. The only difference in all of this is Benitez. This is Benitez. Benitez has now wrestled control away from Marcel Brands, now has probably what he wanted in the first place, and clearly what will have to happen now, because you also have to remember, Everton are observing or are concerned by financial fair play. Which one of the other big clubs in the Premier League have been bothered by financial fair play, suddenly decided, oh no, we're going to stop spending money because we're worried about financial fair play? No, they don't. They carry on doing precisely what they want. So why is the narrative, I've perpetuated that myth as well, why is the narrative that Everton are the only team that are terrified by financial fair play?
Right.
Because they reduced their... I think Moshiri isn't as invested in his football club as people might like to believe.
Or as he was, maybe.
Or as he once was. And I look at it and say, Brands has gone, Benitez gets control over the situation, they're going to have to buy some players because the overall setup isn't right and hasn't been right for some time now.
No.
Well, the first
Well,
window.
they were saying last week Danny sacked the board after they lost to Liverpool.
Well, if you look at the first time, when he first came in, 18-19, Simon talks about the amount that clubs spend and it being relative to what's coming in from TV money. It was less than 100 million. But some of those signings are still there and they've done all right, the first window that they had. I'm talking the likes of Digne, the left-back, Richarlison, even Yerry Mina to a degree when he's fit. It's the next 2 seasons, really, when you look at what they spent. I mean, in terms of what you're saying, Simon,
it's their losses, Danny. It's not what they've spent, because you capitalise your players. It's their losses on salaries. The club is losing a fortune.
No, I get that, but what I'm saying is when you look at his windows and the type of players bringing in, irrelevant at losses, the quality isn't there. The 2 windows after were awful. But what I was going to say is maybe Moshiri has got to the point where he's actually opened up his mind to talk to other people and been open-minded to speak and evolve his network of football people who have opened his eyes more recently. If you're talking about why did they give him a contract 7 months ago and then get rid of him, Probably Benitez, I agree, but there's probably other people around him as well who are opening his eyes to the reality of what's going on at the football club.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with him having a change of mind in this, because it's the right decision. That guy in the role he was in has failed. So he did need to go. Whether it was provoked by the supporters or not isn't really that relevant.
But you look at, again, I think you're right, Danny. But you don't just give somebody, irrespective of how much you back somebody in a position, you don't just give them unfettered control. You do, as the owner, sit back and sense check, if you've got anything about you, sense check the buying policy.
Yeah.
And clearly, all of these purchases have been sanctioned by the owner. Nobody, Danny, nobody in their right mind pays 30 million quid to Arsenal for Alex Iwobi. They just don't.
Yeah, but on the flip
Not
side,
a serious pretender anyway.
I agree with you, but you were saying recently when we were talking about Newcastle that the owners who don't really know their football should be getting a director of football in and then letting him take control and run things.
Yeah, but
you can't do both.
Of course you can. You give him authority and you manage it. nobody that runs a business doesn't just sit there and go, right, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to bankroll a business like football, which is not like a normal business, because normal businesses actually make money.
Yeah.
I'm going to bankroll a business like football, and I'm going to sit back and I'm going to advocate total and utter unconditional responsibility. No, you put somebody in and you listen to their advice and you sense check it and you follow it, and then you follow it over a period of time. And when you go one after the other, and you've had high repute managers in there like Ancelotti that aren't mugs, that understand the world of football, and you sit back over 2 or 3 years and you watch one transaction after another, after another, after another. By that time, you've arrived in April of this year and you think that the guy's still doing a good job.
I know.
So you give him a 3-year new deal,
It's
and
bizarre.
then 7 months later he buys no more players besides a couple of successful ones like Demarai Gray,
Yeah.
and you then fire him.
27th minute tonight. It's reckoned that many Everton fans will stage a walkout protest. Why will we do? Why the 27th minute? They'll do that because, in their view, it's the perfect timing, the perfect way to mark 27 years without a trophy. So, as if they didn't have enough problems, many of the fans who are going to gather tonight say 27 minutes in, we're out of the place. What is the thinking in that, do you think, Simon? Does that in any way help Everton, or does it only add to their woes right now?
Well, I don't think it helps them, but I do think it concentrates the mind. I think the problem with Everton Football Club is Moshiri. I think Moshiri has spent money. I'm not sure he spent as much money as people think he has, because I think if you look at the net spend against the gross spend, I think there's a difference. I think his transfer dealings will be bad, but I think Moshiri doesn't know how to run Everton Football Club. Now, I'm not suggesting that I'm the oracle, because I had successes and failures in equal measure probably. But sitting back and looking at it objectively, I would have loved the opportunity to have owned a football club that Everton with all the potential behind it, because you've got more opportunity to get it right than you've got to get it wrong. From the managers that he's employed to the transfers that he's sanctioned. I mean, even Benitez. I know Benitez can do a decent job, but who in their right minds brings Benitez to Everton under the auspice of Everton fans pushing back against the fact that Benitez wasn't just a Liverpool manager, he was an iconic Liverpool manager that was inextricably indexed to Liverpool. You're reading the room wrong. You've got no youth development policy, you've got no managerial policy, you've got no director of football policy, you've got no financial policy. Which part of Moshiri's ownership of Everton is good? They're going to get sanctioned by financial fair play because they're breaching it left, right and centre because of their spend pattern. They've got players that can't compete. They've got managers that get sacked regularly. They've got managers that join that don't want to be there. I think the whole thing is an absolute horlicks. Now,
so it's rudderless, totally rudderless.
Well, it's rudderless, yes. It's not rudderless because it's got somebody that has a view about how it should go that doesn't really understand it. And that's perplexing to me, because you learn this industry. It's a difficult industry to learn, but after 4 or 5 years, you do learn it.
But he had plenty of time to learn it when he was with Usmanov at Arsenal.
Well, you got to look at the ownership structure of Everton and wonder whose money it is, how that money's been put in, and who's really making the decisions. Because if you've got more than one cook in there, and people don't know what's going on left, right, and centre, Brands is doing it. Is it Moshiri? Is Usmanov involved? How does the whole thing hang together? And you start to look at it and go, this makes no sense. Whichever window you look through, and we'll go back to the fans in a second, whichever window you look at, how is Everton Football Club being run well? They've got no young players coming through. I know there's a couple of kids that got into the team, but we're talking about very small penetration of young players coming through. They've got losses left, right and centre. They've got managers that are unsuccessful. They've got a team that's really poor right now. They've got fans that are disenfranchised. They've got a director of football they've binned. They're buying players way over the top. Which part of this is a success story for a guy that's made £1 billion in other industries?
So is it the 27th minute protest? And I'm going to get some Evertonians on. If you want to give us a call, give us a call. But having said that, Simon, it might be effective tonight in that it shakes up Farhad and it shakes up Bill.
Well, I mean, look, if the background noise, these guys have got other businesses, other interests, and in moments in time, he was in New York last week when they were playing arguably the biggest game of the season. Right? So you look at the priorities, and I'm not saying he shouldn't have his priorities, because football is part of his life, not all of his life. But you look at the dynamics of this and say, I hate, to some extent, the idea that fans can just protest. But there are times where you make your voices heard, and you make them heard for the right reasons. This is a club, irrespective of the heritage and livery and sometimes beauty of this club, that is going absolutely the wrong way.
Yeah.
And it's going the wrong way with Moshiri's money, but it's going the wrong way on Everton fans' time and dime as well.
Yeah.
Because it's their football club, and what's happening right now, they won't get relegated. They've got too much quality there. That's not a consideration. But what a waste of time the last 4 years has been.
Exactly.
Because it's produced nothing, has it?
Well, let me know if you're going to take part in this protest. 27 minutes in. Are you going to walk out tonight? 03717 223344. Danny, I like that from Dave Roberts. If the Everton fans are going to walk in 27 minutes, at least they're staying 7 minutes longer than they did against Liverpool. But
Yeah.
what does this achieve, Danny? Does it make Moshiri and Kenwright and the rest think, God, we really must do something now? Because that will be difficult to watch tonight if there's a mass exodus.
Maybe it focuses the mind. I think I can only talk more from a footballer. When things like that are going on in the stand and there's such discontent, it does affect you on the pitch. It makes it more difficult.
Gives you a bloody excuse as well.
Well, it shouldn't do, but what I'm saying is it takes the focus off the job in hand. And like any normal human being, when you're supported at home by the supporters and they'd be right behind you, it makes a difference. The discontent amongst the Evertonians at the moment is transferring to the players. You can see it. Confidence is low. You know, tonight against a decent Arsenal side, does Rafa go on the front foot and try and get the fans on? Because if you go front foot against Arsenal, suits them. Or does he be more pragmatic and try and stay in the game? And then all of a sudden, when you're playing at Everton, it's one thing for sure. If they drop off and they're not going after you, the fans get discontented. So it's a difficult one from a footballing perspective. But I would rather not see it, but they're frustrated. They're angry.
Well, they're frustrated. Joe is an Evertonian who's one of them. Joe, are you going to take part in this protest tonight? Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. I hope we're all well.
Hi, Joe.
I will be taking part in the protest tonight because, like you were just mentioning, Simon, we're going in the wrong direction. We have been for the past 5 years, and this is sort of the straw on the camel's back. Benitez being in charge, our biggest defeat in a derby in I think 39 years, and just the whole atmosphere in Goodison Park was terrible that last match. We should have a lot better. We should be in a better position. You look at how much money we've spent. Look at our squad. There's no depth.
No.
You look at that starting 11. Comparable to where we would like to be to where we are now. It is terrible.
Yeah, but Joe, say you're 2 up against Arsenal, which is maybe unlikely. I don't know. No disrespect to Everton. What's the point in going there and enjoying 27 minutes of football, seeing the fact that your team's in the lead and then leaving them? Or, conversely, say you're 2 down to Arsenal. What's the point in deserting the players?
Bigger picture, I suppose.
Jim, I'm not advocating leaving the stadium. I'm saying be on your feet, and I myself go in the concourse. I'm not leaving the game. I don't advocate that. What we're trying to do is show the board that we're not happy.
Right,
what's the ideal?
Move from your seat.
What's the ideal for you then moving forward? Because I don't know. Maybe my view. Simon shed some light on the Moshiri situation and the spending, and it's not through a lack of intent from him, is it? Is it just the fact that he's just not capable of doing the job well? He has put some money in. He has tried to do the right thing.
We can all be busy fools, can't we?
No, but when you bring in someone like Ancelotti, I know Ancelotti left, but when you brought him in at the beginning of last season and he started off well and the positivity was there, this is only the beginning of last season, let's not forget, right? Everybody was on board with that initially. I know it was during COVID and difficult times, but everyone was seeming to think that he was trying to be positive and do the right thing by bringing someone like Ancelotti.
Of course, but it was a Hollywood signing. And
I said that with you.
And we both said it. Both sensible people said it.
But what I'm saying is is it fair to be so judgmental when the guy he might have failed in terms of the outcome, but his intent has been good?
Of course, the outcomes of unintended consequences. But you look at it and say, when you're in control of a football club, you have a responsibility to your checkbook and your responsibility, unfortunately, to lots and lots of fans that have a view and the media. When you sit there after 3 or 4 years and you've had various managers, whether it's Sam, whether it's Silva, you got to look at the landscape and go, what is the best landscape, right? Ancelotti coming into us, on paper it looks like a good signing, but most people around football that looked at football, influential people sat there and went, this has the propensity to go really the wrong way. Then you follow that up with Benitez, which it's just mind-blowing. I know Benitez is a good manager, but the backdrop was always going to be anything goes wrong, which is a balance of probability it would, in comes the pressure.
Before we hit the break, Joe is still with us. Joe, no matter what happens tonight on 27 minutes, are you still going to back Benitez?
Listen, Benitez is not the problem. It's higher than that. So we can't all look at Benitez because look at the people he's brought in. He's brought in Demarai Gray, he's brought in Andros. He is not the sole problem. And that is how bad...
But that performance you put out against Watford was a disgrace.
Yeah.
It was a disgrace. That's Benitez and the players. That's not ownership. That was a disgrace. That
So,
capitulation.
Joe, let me get this right. You're going to move from your seat in 27 minutes, go out in the concourse, and then take your seat again?
Yeah, I will be back, say after half time, or I'll see.
All right, Joe, listen, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Is it kind of a bizarre sense of deja vu with you when you think of what happened at Palace and maybe certain problems you didn't foresee on the horizon, looming on the horizon? Is this the same for Moshiri? Is he now encountering problems that he not for one moment thought he'd encounter?
I didn't forecast the world's biggest banking crisis. I wasn't going to be able to forecast it. I didn't see myself losing the best part of 100 million quid in about 7 months. So that's a different dynamic. I think a lot of the football decisions that I eventually learnt to make were steeped in good sense. That's why we had a really good youth development policy that produced players like Moses and Klein and Wayne Routledge and Wilfried Zaha, and I can go on with a lot more. And also why we were always punching our weight above our weight, trying to get out of the Championship into the Premier League. In this instance, look, I didn't have the wealth that Moshiri had, so I had a certain managerial pool that I could dip into, and that managerial pool probably worked 50% of the time. He's 0 for 5 now, isn't he? I mean, let's have a look at it. Somewhere along the line, you've got to look at it and say, when are you going to start making appointments that either make sense to the football club or make sense to you?
Yeah.
Because at no point are we looking, with the exception of a brief period with Ronald Koeman, which I don't think was his appointment, that Everton have been going in the right direction. They start each season with this fanfare of decent results, and then everybody goes, Evertonians specifically, we're on our way. Danny poured vinegar all over that last year by saying you're not going to get into the Champions League, you're not good enough, and he got a load of abuse for it, and he was right.
Yeah.
And the same they started this season as well. So it's not about not forecasting things, it's about common sense. I just listed off a whole list of things about Everton, and is there any one of those things that are wrong in terms of youth development, financial governance, players being bought for the right money, managers and director of football? All of them are just facts.
Right.
They are
right.
wrong decisions.
Yeah.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.